My name is Ariella Kayabaga. I'm new elect city councillor for Ward 13 in London, Ontario. I came to Canada as a refugee. We first settled in Montreal because we're francophones. I come from Burundi. It's a war-torn country that's been experiencing genocide since 1962. And I lived through one genocide in 1993 and one genocide in Rwanda in 1994, and eventually made our way to Canada. And we lived in Montreal for 2 years, and then my mom visited London. I don't know who she visited. I don't have a lot of recollection memory of the whole entire journey. There are a few instances and memories I have of coming to Canada and not knowing Canada, not knowing that Canada was a country. So I remember when we were kids, we used to play a game, and everybody would get to pick a country that they like or that they want to identify with, and it was like a circle game, and then somebody would shout something and you'd have to go and run and fight for your country, because maybe more than one child would want that country. So, and whoever won would, pretend that they're going to move to that country, or you'd be called that, that you're from that country for a week or two. And I never knew Canada. It's funny because we never saw Canada anywhere. We knew the United States, but not Canada. So when we came to Canada, we were told we were going to New York. And I was very excited to go to New York. But I think on the plane to come to New York, our mom just sat us down and said, by the way, we're going to be refugees. And we were like, what? The only refugees I knew in my life were refugees in Africa, and I saw blue tents in my mind right away. I pictured we're moving into blue tents. When we got to Canada, it was in blue tents. And the journey to coming to Canada, we came through l'école, which is like a crossing border, and you apply for asylum and you get in. We didn't understand any of that. All we knew was that we spent 2 days at the border trying to be registered and come in, and there was a lot of questions that were asked that made me question me, my culture, and who I really was. I remember one of the questions that they asked us at the border was, are you all related? Do you all have the same parents? Because we all had different last names, and it's a cultural thing, right? We give different last names to your children. It's not really a last name, it's a name, and it's a whole entire other story to explain all of that. But I remember just asking my mom a week later, like, so are we related? Do we all have the same parents? Because it was a question I heard her being asked while we were coming in. So anyways, we went to Montreal to the YMCA, and it was supposed to be what my mom said, the bad shelter that we're all going to be received in. And to me, it looked like a hotel. It looked different from, I'm glad I had a really bad vision of what refugees were going to go through. And unlike him, I didn't have to, go through some of that. For me, it was a great experience, just going to another country and going through the changes. But then we moved to London, and London was an Anglophone city. We were francophones. We'd never spoken a word of English before. I think I had 25% of my English classes at that point, so English was just not my language. And when we came here, our mom just thought, let's just get them involved in every single community activity that there is so that they can learn English. And church was one of the avenues that we took to learn English, and I became Sunday school teacher. And I had a strong accent, so but eventually I picked it up, because I had a lot of friends, and we were much younger, so language was much easier to pick up and to learn. It was very different, culturally different. And then I was in a French first language school. I graduated from that. I went to university, but this time I decided to go to university in English at Carleton. It was very difficult, but I made it aware to them that I was a francophone, and I had never been in an English school before, and it was the first time, so they really, really helped me. And I graduated in political science. After I graduated, I worked. I worked a little bit in government, just being a staff, and then I moved back. Because when I was in university, so I grew up here in London, and growing up in London, I had diverse friends from different countries that were not African. And I remember when I moved to Ottawa, then I made friends with all these African, people. There was a lot of students who were international students who became friends. I began to learn about who I really am while I spent time with them in university, because they were so proud of their accents. They were so proud to be who they were. And growing up in London, I was trying to assimilate. I was trying to to live the life so that I don't stand out, because I stood out. Whenever I went, I stood out. And I remember not having a super great experience in high school as a Black student. So you tend to try to pass by and hide through the crowd so you don't get noticed, but you get noticed. But in Ottawa was a different experience for me, where I got to learn about my culture. I got to kind of like all of a sudden take on this identity of an African Canadian, and it was great. And I realized I didn't know a lot about my culture, and I didn't know a lot about who I really am. And I had Nigerian and Ghanaian friends, and they're very strong. They have a very strong culture, and I really appreciate that. And they, you know, they would wear African clothes at school. They'd bring African food at school and would eat together. And I was like, you know what? I need to journey back to where I came from to kind of get to know myself. And I moved back to Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, and I was in South Africa for a little bit as well. And it took me about a year and a half of just traveling and connecting and learning. And then realizing that I was not even home when I was there. It was interesting because people constantly asked me, where are you going home? And I was seen as a Canadian or an American, as they would say, or a foreigner, as they would call me, when I'm from there. And that was really interesting as well. So that experience lasted a year and a half, and I came back to London, where my family is established, and I was working in the Francophone community. But eventually I got a position to work with the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, in Liberal Research Bureau. So what I did was, Kate just left, but I was one of her staff. You know, we handle them, what we call it. We were kind of like their mini bosses. And I came back to London because working in politics on that level just was too big for me, and I'm more of a community-oriented person. I wanted to do more local stuff and work with people and talk to people, as I had worked in community services in the past. I came back to London with the intent of doing a lot more community work, and I got a mentorship program position at City Hall to work with the councillor, Virginia Ridley, who's currently the councillor for Ward 10. And after that, I decided to run myself, and I ran a campaign for 6 months, and we got elected. So that's a little bit of my story.